The tradition of a chief executive giving a verbal State of the Union address, as I've said in the past, dates back to January 8th, 1790, when President George Washington delivered the first annual report before a joint session of Congress meeting then in New York City. In Downers Grove, we've developed our own similar tradition, which has become known as the State of the Village Address, which is designed to highlight some of the successes of the past year. Now, these successes would not be possible, of course, without the collaborative and dedicated efforts of a significant team comprised of village staff, elected officials, stakeholder partnerships, and resident volunteers. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure to present to you the achievements of the year 2012 in the annual State of the Village Address. This year's State of the Village Address will focus, as you will see, on 6 key topics: stewardship and sustainability, infrastructure investment, municipal services, local economy, continuous innovation, and recognition of our status as municipal leaders amongst our peers. I'll begin with 2012 seeing the village once again demonstrating itself as a prudent steward of financial and environmental resources. Of course, unless you were living on Mars for the last year or so, you know that the village in 2012 introduced a stormwater utility, the very first one in DuPage County. The stormwater utility created a permanent, sustainable, dedicated funding source for stormwater infrastructure system and maintenance. A more logical, equitable, and accountable funding structure with payments based on impervious area rather than property value. This will allow us to continue to maintain our infrastructure in compliance with both our local needs as well as federal Clean Water Act requirements. This was a long-running project and had been in discussion in one way or another for over a decade before finally being formally adopted and implemented last year. In 2012, we also issued $35 million in bonds. These bonds were used to reconstruct streets that have fallen into disrepair, and we'll be seeing some of those later tonight, and also to construct much-needed water system improvements. Existing revenues are used to make the debt service payments so there were no tax increases in order to do so. What helped keep our cost of borrowing low was our AA+ bond rating, which I would say is a lot better than the state of Illinois, but unfortunately that's not saying very much. But it is an indication that keeping a good bond rating, as Commissioner Durkin will often point out, keeps our borrowing costs down, which is ultimately of a benefit to our residents and our taxpayers. Along the process, Standard & Poor's, notwithstanding their recent press, their report in the process offered a strong endorsement of the village's long-range financial planning process. Once again, something that we have utilized here with a great deal of success. The next item I'd like to focus on is that we launched a monthly electronics recycling program. This grew out of the success, of course, of the annual recycling extravaganza. Now doing it on a monthly basis, the first Saturday of every month, I believe. I took advantage of it myself this past Saturday. Provides residents an opportunity to dispose of electronics that cannot be placed and should not be placed into landfills. So this has been a very successful program as well and is supported by lots of volunteers. Another program introduced last year that helps demonstrate good, prudent financial stewardship is, after looking at the issue, we decided to privatize downtown and train station snow removal. And candidly, up until a few weeks ago, I wouldn't have had anything to talk about in terms of snow removal, but we've now had enough to see that this is working pretty well. By privatizing the snow removal in this area, we reduced the costs of doing so by $8,000 per year. I've now completed the snow routes 30% quicker, eliminating the need for village-owned specialty vehicles, a capital expense, and also decreases the risk and liability expenses associated with conducting the operation with our own staff. This was another good innovation by our village staff. Speaking of good innovations by village staff, we also solved a long-running issue that Commissioner Durkin was going to stay in office until it was finally resolved. Now he can retire, which is executing an agreement with PACE, the bus system, in order to eliminate the operating deficit of our own village-run bus system. Now, all expenses with the Grove Commuter Shuttle are covered by PACE and the bus riders themselves through the farebox revenues. This allows for a reduction of accumulated deficit using interest income growth. And we now have additional streets that are being resurfaced as $185,000 per year in gasoline tax revenue was shifted from previously supporting the bus system to now street resurfacing. So this has also helped us to make more repairs to streets that needed them very much. So once again, the key here is now, Commissioner Durkin is very glad to know that no village funds are used to operate the village buses. So we were able to figure out a solution to this puzzle that continues the service and yet does so in a financially responsible way. Well, it wouldn't be a State of the Village's address if we did not feature a photograph of a fire truck. So I want to use this to point out that through improvements and efforts of our fire department and village staff, we were able to reduce costs and also improve service through the fire department. And what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, we've been able to improve service levels while reducing expenses, resulting in 70% fewer call responses by the ladder truck that you see featured here in the photograph. We were able to reduce expenses for vehicle operation and maintenance, extend the life expectancy of the ladder truck and engines, all of which are very expensive pieces of equipment, and has reduced our reliance on mutual aid support. So here was another example of, through good creative thinking, we were able not only to reduce costs, but also to enhance our services. Speaking of infrastructure, which I've touched upon a couple of times, obviously the big story in 2012 when it comes to infrastructure was the completion of the long-awaited Belmont Underpass. What a tremendous feat of engineering, and anyone who has driven down Belmont Road while there's a train going overhead can't help but marvel at the accomplishment. The only thing that I think the engineering accomplishment is dwarfed by was the tremendous efforts of many, many people over a decade to actually bring it to reality. The Belmont Underpass, or Grade Separation Project as it is called, has a number of advantages, including improved vehicular and pedestrian safety, enhanced traffic flow, an increased number of commuter parking spaces, and improved access to the Ellsworth Business Park, which is of course important for economic development, which we will touch upon later. The key thing to understand here is that no village funds were used in the filming of this underpass. I'm being serious. No village dollars were contributed to this project. It all came from other organizations, and so this was a huge win for our community. Now, where the village did invest a lot of money last year was in its infrastructure. And I hinted at this a little bit earlier. Last year, we invested $19 million in infrastructure. Where did it go, you ask? And there's a nice picture up here of the Grove Street project. There's a before picture, and here's the after. A environmentally sustainable street through the use of some environmentally sustainable pavers. But where did all that money go, might you ask? Well, let me break it down for you. $14.2 million were put into street reconstruction, $3.4 million were put into maintaining our water system, $1.3 million were put into the stormwater system, and $730,000 into sidewalks. And there's a very handsome looking sidewalk right there. I'd like to pause briefly and talk about a couple of examples of infrastructure projects that we had this year that really worked out well and were high visibility. One was reconstructing the streets and the water main in the Valley View and Nottingham subdivisions here in the community. These projects, in addition to reconstructing the streets, included traffic calming measures to reduce speeds, coordinated the street reconstruction with water main replacements in order to reduce costs and reduce resident disruption, and as you saw earlier with the Grove Street project in particular, created a model project of environmental sustainability. These are just a few of the first of many street reconstruction projects that will be taking place over the next 5 years. So I'll be looking forward to reporting on more of these this time next year. Another example that I'd like to highlight is the construction of a detention facility at 2nd and Cumner. This project alleviated structure and street flooding in the area, created an environmentally sustainable detention facility, and increased public awareness by using a QR code, one of Commissioner Newstadt's favorite things, and just for him I want to make sure that everybody knew what a QR code looked like. One of these is featured on the informational sign on site so that residents who are curious as to the background of the story can take out their mobile phones and, using a QR reader, learn more about the project. And thanks to Commissioner Newstadt, you're seeing those appear more and more throughout the village on similar projects. This project in particular is an award-winning project. It was named the American Society of Civil Engineers Project of the Year, no less. So all in all, a great project to highlight. Some other things that we've done in terms of top quality infrastructure is improving neighborhood traffic management. through a traffic management study in the Whittier School neighborhood, we've been able to reduce average vehicle speeds, increase pedestrian safety by redesigning pedestrian street crossings, and improve intersection safety by adding signage at all intersections. This was the first such neighborhood traffic study, but many, many more are planned. There is one going on right now at the Downers Grove North Herrick Middle School area as we speak. Well, maybe not as we speak, but in this general time frame. So those are some examples of providing top quality infrastructure last year. And in addition to infrastructure, one of the major missions of the village, of course, is to deliver exceptional municipal services. And again, I'd like to highlight just a few things that took place in 2012. Again, unless you were on another planet or in Siberia, you no doubt were aware of the electrical aggregation program that was launched and implemented not just in Downers Grove, but in many communities. After a referendum, we were able to take advantage of this program and reduce resident electric bills by an average of $350 per year. The program that we adopted also enhances the use of renewable energy sources by purchasing renewable energy credits. And we were to gain some additional administrative expenses, reductions in administrative expenses, significantly by partnering with our neighbors in the village of Westmont. So all in all, electrical aggregation as a first-time experiment for the village of Downers Grove has been paying off pretty well. Speaking of electricity, and not the cost of electricity, but the reliability of electricity, many will recall after some very violent storms a couple of summers ago, we held a town hall meeting in 2011 with senior executives from Commonwealth Edison with respect to their electrical distribution as it pertains to the village of Downers Grove. As a result of that town hall meeting, there were a number of steps taken by ComEd, including tree trimming and equipment replacement, that has had the effect of improving the reliability of electrical service in our community. We continue to report out on our efforts with respect to working with ComEd, and it has basically resulted in both improved reliability of the system in our community and improved communication and relationships with Commonwealth Edison. The event was so successful that we did it again in 2012, and it has now become an annual event. So both businesses and residents have an opportunity to work one-on-one with Commonwealth Edison to raise issues that they're concerned about in terms of the reliability of electrical service. Parking. Parking is always a big issue in Downers Grove. It's been an issue since as long as I can remember, and it will always be an issue. The downtown area is obviously very popular and is the source of lots of attention in terms of parking and parking enhancements. And 2012 was no exception. Due to studies and enhancements with respect to parking in the downtown business district, we were able to achieve increased opportunities for shopper and visitor parking, increased the number of shopper parking spaces on both, well, in particular on the north side of the railroad tracks, which is something that merchants and others over there have been asking for some time. We have provided 15-minute parking spaces on each block and increased the number of free parking spaces available beginning at 11 a.m. So this is, again, something that we continue to look at and figure out ways to improve even further as circumstances dictate. Well, Downers Grove is a technology community, and we hold ourselves out as a technology community. In fact, it's in our mission statement and our description of who we are. And no technology community worth its salt would not have a Facebook page. So yes, 2012 saw the village of Downers Grove launching a Facebook page, and if you haven't visited it or liked it, I would encourage you to do so. This tool has allowed us enhanced communication with residents and other stakeholders. On average, we post twice a day with important news and happenings. This helps the village. This helps establish the village as a primary source for news and information in our area, and expands an already exceptionally extensive communication network here in Downers Grove. Well, we use Facebook to talk about major accomplishments, and one that we celebrated was the reaccreditation of our police department by CALEA, or the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. Well, why is this important, you might ask? Well, I know it was a lot of work, and our hats are off to our police department for putting all the work into achieving this accomplishment. But why was that important, might you ask? Well, I'll let you know. Number one, it reduces risk and liability expenses for the village. It ensures the use of best practices in policing and achieves 100% compliance with required national standards. So this accreditation is not only a feather in the cap of our police department, but has real meaningful benefits to our community. I talked about the economy earlier, and one of our constant focuses here in Downers Grove is facilitating a strong and diverse local economy. And obviously, Ogden Avenue and the car dealerships that are there are important because of the sales tax that they generate. It helps us keep other taxes lower than what they otherwise might be. I wanted to just touch upon two success stories with respect to auto dealerships on Ogden Avenue. And one is we welcomed a new Aston Martin dealer. And I know, Commissioner Durkin, you didn't like the color of the first one, so you traded it already, I understand. But this was a huge coup to the village of Downers Grove, having an Aston Martin dealership choose to locate in our community. Just to give you an idea of how important that is for our economic engine, this dealership is expected to increase our annual sales tax revenue by about $185,000 on an annual basis. So this is a pretty big deal. It also enhances the attractive high-end dealership area on Ogden Avenue, increases awareness of our community, Downers Grove, through Aston Martin's own national advertising campaign, which includes the Downers Grove location. And they had a very nice sort of, wasn't a ribbon cutting, but it was a opening celebration or a pre-opening celebration, which also drew a lot of attention to our community. In addition to Aston Martin, we also retained the Packy Webb Ford dealership on Ogden Avenue. This project was a success in that it also facilitated pedestrian improvements at Finley and Ogden Avenue and responded to unexpected changes in state regulations regarding pedestrian improvements. I'd like to underscore that both the Aston Martin dealership and retaining the Packy Webb Ford are examples of successes in the relationship between the Village of Downers Grove and the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation and our auto dealer attraction and retention strategy. This is the type of thing where we do need to spend a lot of attention, time, and effort on it because it's a very competitive world that we live in. Other municipalities would love to attract these businesses either to their communities or away from us, and we need to continue to work hard in conjunction with the Economic Development Corporation to maintain these vibrant businesses in our community. We have our guests here tonight from Midwestern University, and we wouldn't be a State of the Village presentation without celebrating another expansion of Midwestern University here in Downers Grove. If you haven't seen it going up in the construction cranes yet, you can drive up to Finley and see it. But we, working with Midwestern University, the village facilitated construction of a 128,400 square foot auditorium with classrooms, a 193,200 square foot dental clinic, and a 345,000 square foot parking deck that will service those new facilities. This facility, when it's all completed, will increase the number of students and guests contributing to the Downers Grove economy substantially. And in a great additional benefit, the auditorium that's being constructed will be a performing arts venue that, thanks to Midwestern University, will be made available for local non-for-profit performances, again enhancing the overall quality of life in our community. And importantly, the dental services through the clinic will be made available to the public at below market rates. And once again, this was another success story achieved through our partnership with the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation. Downers Grove is proud to be the home for a number of headquarters, and we are able to count another one on our list in 2012. Downers Grove will soon be the national headquarters of the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy. I worked very hard to make sure I pronounced that correctly. The village, working with the ASGE, facilitated construction of a 41,000 square foot office headquarters for the ASGE, which will increase the number of physicians and guests contributing to the Downers Grove economy. Finally, we had a little bit of discussion earlier tonight on our agenda with respect to the OASIS program, which is an acronym that stands for the Ogden Avenue Site Improvement Strategy. This program was expanded in 2012, and you saw a couple of grants approved tonight. That was done through an expansion of the funding available for improvements to private property, reducing the matching funding requirements to make participation easier, and this program overall has been pretty successful. Since its inception, all right, we'll try it one more time. Since its inception, try that 10 times fast. $410,000 in total grant funding has been awarded to 20 projects in this program's history. And the key thing here is that overall, the grants from this program has spurred $1.32 million in private investment. So not a bad return on our $410,000. And once again, this was something that is achieved through partnership with the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation. Downers Grove, among other things, also is very proud of its ability to cultivate continuous innovation in our community. And once again, 2012 was no exception. We are a technology community, and again, no self-respecting technology community would not be in the cloud, and we are in the cloud. The village has migrated its systems internally to Google Apps, and you might say, well, that's really cool, but what are the benefits? Well, here are a few. Having these things in the cloud instead of locally allows us to reduce hardware, software, and labor expenses, reduces the total cost of ownership, and it has some additional benefits such as improving our search capabilities, which means that we spend a reduced amount of time doing FOIA responses to FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, and overall enhances features for document sharing and collaboration by village staff as well as elected officials. Speaking of the internet and websites, one of the other things that was accomplished in 2012 was village staff responding to a council challenge to come up with an electronic clearinghouse for not-for-profit resources, partnered with DuPage County and using existing resources. Staff created an online searchable database for social services provided by Downers Grove area organizations. This has a number of benefits, including increased participation by local not-for-profit service providers by creating awareness of the county program and offering training. And, as mentioned, achieved the Village Council's desired outcome at little cost to the village by avoiding duplication of government services. This is yet another example of effective intergovernmental partnership and cooperation between the village and other taxing bodies. Speaking of partnerships, one thing that we're very proud of, among other things, was our experimental and yet very successful agreement with CSPAR and District 58 Grade School District for fleet operation expenses. We entered into an agreement that reduced fleet operation expenses for District 58 and CSPAR by sharing fixed costs with the village. This had the consequence of reducing District 58 and CSPAR's maintenance expenses by $2,800 annually, simply by working in conjunction with the village. And this obviously is to benefit of our shared constituents. It also results in the improved condition of District 58 and CSPAR vehicles, and I'm sure that Commissioner Neustadt can testify to that if needed. But once again, another successful example of effective intergovernmental partnerships by the village and other taxing bodies. One more example that I'll mention is our launch of an interoperable radio system. This allows for communication amongst all public safety agencies in DuPage County, improves responses to emergency events involving multiple agencies, and this entire program is funded by the DuPage County Emergency Telephone Safety Board. This is another example of the village working effectively in intergovernmental partnership with other government bodies in our community, something that we continue to strive to identify opportunities to pursue in a way that is to the benefit of our shared constituents. Well, all this work did not go unnoticed in 2012, and it should probably come as little surprise that a lot of folks here in Downers Grove have recognized these accomplishments, but it's always nice to receive recognition statewide and also across the country. 2012 was a great example of Downers Grove being recognized as a leader amongst municipalities. And let me give you some examples of what I'm referring to. First, we received a number of awards for both projects and individual achievements, and here are just a few. The ASCE Project of the Year, as I mentioned, was awarded to the second Encumber Basin Detention Project. Our comprehensive plan received the APA Illinois Chapter Best Award. The Finance Department is quite full of itself for all the awards that it's won, two of which included the GFOA Distinguished Budget Presentation Award and the GFOA Excellence in Financial Reporting Award for our comprehensive annual financial report, also more commonly known as the audit. We're going to have to build a bigger wall to support all the awards that the Finance Department has been earning in recent years. But to continue, Downers Grove was designated as a top transit community by DePaul University's Chaddick Institute for Metropolitan Development. The Citizens Utility Board named Downers Grove as one of the top energy-saving communities in the area. And some of our village staff were singled out as exceptional, as they should be. Marcia Giesler of our fire department won not only the NFPA Fire and Life Safety Educator of the Year Award, but also the Illinois Fire Alliance Educator of the Year Award. I hazard to say, if this keeps up, they're going to name an award after Marcia Giesler, and so they should. But I also want to point out that our own Nick Linklater in the police department won the award from Mothers Against Drunk Driving for his efforts in our community. Well, Downers Grove also received some media attention in 2012, and again, let me just share a few examples with you. Our Memorial Day ceremony was featured on NBC Nightly News. Faraday Live, that took place during the week of the Ryder Cup, was taped at the Tivoli Theater here in Downers Grove, and you know you've really made it to the big time when the Tivoli is the subject and the situs of a Geico commercial. Here's just a few seconds from that if you haven't already seen it.
On my journey across America, I found new ways to tell people about saving money. This is Bobby.
And goodbye, Bobby. Oh, it's always nice when we get that kind of advertising for our community, and what better to see across the televisions in the United States than our own beloved Tivoli Theater. Well, one thing that we received towards the end of last year that was a little bit of an unexpected and early Christmas present was Forbes magazine listed Downers Grove one of the top 10 friendliest communities to live in the entire country. In fact, we came in number 8th in the country, and we were the only one that was given that distinction in the state of Illinois. And these things don't happen by accident. It's because of the kind of successes that I've been describing so far during this presentation that we achieved that kind of recognition. Now, this logo that you're seeing here on the screen is a result of a joint effort by the Village of Downers Grove, the Downers Grove Park District, the Downtown Management Corporation, and the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation to promote our designation as one of the top friendliest communities to live in the country, and will soon be available for use by local businesses, civic organizations, and governmental bodies. Details on how to obtain your copy will be available on the Village website and local media outlets starting tomorrow. So call now. Operators are standing by. But once again, another example of the Village working with other taxing bodies in collaboration and cooperation to celebrate a success that really the whole community earned and should be very proud of. Now you might ask, why is all this important? Sure, we're patting ourselves on the back. We won some awards. We're getting on TV nationally. Increased public awareness of Downers Grove on a national level brings advantages to our community. It helps with our branding, and it brings opportunities that might not otherwise be there. So this is all things that we should be very happy about, and a lot of it comes just through our own hard work and no additional effort. So we're reaping some of the rewards. Those are the 6 pillars I want to talk about in terms of topics for the State of the Village address. And as always, it's tough to distill down a whole year to a mere 30 minutes or however over I've already gone. But in sum, ladies and gentlemen, the state of our village is this: strong and resourceful. With the Great Recession not too distant in our rearview mirror, we are proud to be on strong financial footing, but we are mindful of the challenges that lay ahead and the curveballs that can come from many directions, too often from the state capitol, unfortunately. The lessons of the past few years will be instructive for many yet to come. One in particular will be the need to continually innovate wherever possible and to cooperate, collaborate, and consolidate local government resources wherever prudent and feasible. As President Grover Cleveland put it in his State of the Union address on December 6, 1886, such innovation will necessarily, of course, in the beginning, be within the domain of intelligent experiment. And the subject in every stage should receive all possible encouragement from the government. I'd like to think that our intelligent experiments in 2012 and other years turned out to be pretty darn successful, and we will continue to encourage at every stage possible further such intelligent experiment. In closing, I'd like to thank the Village Council, my colleagues in particular, for their leadership and their vision, our village staff for helping to craft and then implement this vision so successfully. I'd like to thank our many volunteers on boards and commissions and elsewhere throughout the community, and of course our residents for their input and support in making all of this possible. As said before, it is no accident that Forbes magazine chose Downers Grove as one of the top 10 friendliest towns to live in the United States, and that's because the good people of this community make it so. Thank you for your attention, and we'll see you next year.